Welcome to the Creative Playing Podcast Network. Join us as we review our favorite RPGs, collectible card games, MMOs, video games, PC games, and bring up interesting topics and things that we'd like to share with everyone. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Kelly, aka Trixie from Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion to Ragnarok story, and Tilda Wimblewick from D&D Journey of the 5th Edition. First off, I would just like to say thank you to everyone for listening to our varied adventures, as well as for rating us on iTunes and RPGpodcast.com. If you haven't rated us yet, we would greatly appreciate it if you could. And if you're looking for more ways to support our efforts, we are now on Patreon, a great site where you can help us continue making more podcasts, as well as some special surprises for our patrons. If you can, please look us up at www.patreon.com/cppn. Every little bit helps. And again, thank you for listening.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me introduce myself. I am Baron Johann Kharza. This is my steampunk persona. I am a mercenary, philanthropist, mercenary. My real name is actually Paul Martell. I'm a 24-year veteran of the Arizona Department of Corrections. This is what I do for fun.
Sounds like an AA meeting.
It's an AA meeting. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Steampunk 101. I'm Barry Kharza. This is my friend, Gentleman Robot. My compatriot up here is
John Floyd, and I was Gentleman Robot just a few moments ago with my persona sitting back here, so I can take my head off so you guys can hear me. But yes, and I currently work on Fort Huachuca, and yes, and I am a steampunk. So.
Yep.
Hi, my name's John, and I'm a steampunk. Hi, John.
Hi, John.
Well, this is another artist with us.
Jeff McDaniel.
Jeff
Go ahead.
McDaniel. He is also displaying some of his wares today. So last year we did the same showing at a different time. It's a little bit smaller. We had different people. This year they gave us the ability to display all of our wares. Well, more of them. Everything in the show belongs to us and to Jeff. You know, it's one of those things where I started out as my very first, I loved dressing up as a kid. Halloween was my favorite holiday, still is. I created costumes from nothing, because back in the day when I was growing up, and many of us were growing up, Halloween costumes were cheap plastic faces and whatever else. Didn't work with me. So I wrapped myself in sheets and made myself a ghost. I wrapped myself in sheets and made myself a ninja. There's a theme to all of this, right? We didn't have the stuff, so we made our stuff ourselves. As I got older, I get into miniature painting. I got into a lot of different arts and crafts. I've always been one to create. I fell in love with Civil War reenacting. Arizona is not the best place to Civil War reenact.
No.
Sadly, there's only a few battles, and the people that run those battles, although are lovely people, are great. They really want to.
Steampunk's a close second.
Yes, yes. They really want to bring the Civil War to the public. It's just one of those things where it's crazy. So I found out while doing Civil War reenacting something called steampunk. I was looking for some other equipment or whatever, and I saw this. And I said, "What is steampunk? What could possibly be this?" I opened up some websites and everything and went, "Whoa, whoa, this is really cool." So it was like crossing Civil War era all the way up to the early 1900s with science fiction. And I said, I think I found my niche. I think I found what I want to do. And I started to see a lot of the different things that were made by other artists. And I said to myself, oh, I can do much better than that. So I started creating. And creating. And then I met a group of crazy people that decided, I said, these are my people. I fit right in. We have the same style. We have the same desire. We create. When I met John was at an event that they threw in Bisbee. And I said, when my wife and I went down, I said, this is really cool. You know, I was really impressed. I looked at his stuff as opposed to some of the other artists that were displayed, and I was gravitated towards him because he's like me. He looks at junk and goes, I can make something with this. I don't need to go out and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on supplies when it's laying around in the trash somewhere. You drink a Coke bottle, you throw it away or recycle it. We look at it and go, fuel tank, set it aside. You finish your toilet paper tube or whatever, you recycle it or throw it away. We look at it and go, something, you know, and you put it aside.
Smokestack.
Smokestack. Smokestack, right over there, right? So we repurpose things. We're like the original recyclers. We're scrounge hounds. We look for things like that, and we make our art with it. So that's where my love for the event comes, my love for the genre. I don't only cosplay steampunk. I cosplay Star Wars. I still have Civil War outfits. I can do lots of different things. I have amazing friends who I cannot sew. I have amazing friends that can, and they right over here. They create the things for us. So I build my gear, I wrap, you know, and then they do the things that I can't do. That's the beauty of this, is that we support one another. We support one another. They came all the way down from Tucson to be with us today, which is amazing for me. It shows the camaraderie, you know, and they came from Sierra Vista, they came from all to show the camaraderie for us and support us, and I really appreciate it. I'm sure he does too. So, that being said, take it away. No, go ahead.
No, it's the same thing for me. I mean, we kind of fell into it. We had gone to the Phoenix Comic-Con that they do every summer, which they do it here in the summer, and they do other ones in the winter up in Wisconsin. So I don't get it, but it was in the summer. So we went there, and I fell in love, and I started looking at the Mandalorians and the guys that do all the Star Wars reenactment, and I immediately was gravitated to that, and I said, that's what I want to do. And I was dead set. I was going to do a Mandalorian outfit. And the Mandalorians, are, for those of you that aren't aware, is like Boba Fett. They wear the helmets, or the stormtroopers. I was going to build any one of those things. And I stayed there probably for the 3 days that we were there. I was there probably about 45-50% of the time that I was at the convention, maybe more. But when I got home, I realized that a lot of the stuff that they make, I either didn't have access to that type of materials, because most of the folks that are making that are in larger cities. And at the time, we hardly ever went up to Tucson. Sierra Vista, this was in 2010 when we went. Sierra Vista had, you know, the Ace and the Home Depot, and I think Lowe's was in as well, but that was just about it. We didn't have places where we could go down to our local, and a lot of our friends that live in Phoenix now that we know, they go, oh yeah, just go down to my plastic guy. He's in, you know, Glendale, you know, or he's in Goodyear. I'm going, that's 5 hours from here. No, I can't do that. So I realized really quick that I couldn't build that and make that. And so I started, like Paul, I went online and we had talked with a couple of people, and I remember right next to a table about the size that the refreshments are on is all that there was for a stand for the Wild Wild West Con. And they had a table set up with a few pieces, a couple of top hats with some goggles, and they had the little things that we actually have here now for Wild West Con sitting at their table. And I remember I picked up one, and I thought that was kind of cool. And I typed in, you know, steampunk, and like Paul, I was overwhelmed. I mean, it's so much out there. It's even, you know, quadrupled that today. Yeah. But I realized that in a short time that I could do some of that, and I really liked that. And we did a quick Halloween party, and we did some stuff, and then we found out when that convention was coming up, and we went to that convention, and I was hooked. And then they didn't do it the next year. Because I started making a whole bunch of things after that. And then we found out that they were going to come back. They took a year off. They were going to come back. And we went to a couple other conventions, and we started meeting a lot of people along the way, both in Tucson and Sierra Vista, like Paul. And that's when we did our own event and in Bisbee, I met a whole bunch more folks. And it kind of grew from there. And we realized that really quick that a lot of the people that we started making friends with had the same outlook and had been in other genres or had cosplayed or had gone out and done other things like that. And we realized that it's more of a family, and close friends that will give each other a holler, and we don't maybe always get dressed up, but we'll go to dinner, we hang out, if we're up in Tucson for something else, maybe going to Tandy Leather or something like that from here. But it became more of a close-knit bunch of friends. I mean, almost like family. I mean, some of the folks here, well, all the folks here are like, either, distant cousins. So, not even distant, close.
The cousins you like to talk to, right?
Dysfunctional
The ones you
family.
like to talk
Yes.
to.
But yeah, I mean, we make stuff. I had to start making stuff just like Paul did out of different things, and I have books up here if you want to go through them. Has some of my stuff, some Paul's stuff in those books that shows how we made them and out of some of the things we picked up. But my youngest daughter to this day, when she sees me staring at something too long, she just goes, "Dad, it's not steampunk. Let's go." Because I went through about a 2-year period of time where everything could be made steampunk. I mean, there's a bunch of things that are both on his and mine that are just things that we could pick up here in Sierra Vista at either Walmart, Ace, Lowe's, all of the ones I named. As y'all know, we just got the Hobby Lobby just a few years ago, and we pick up a couple of things here and there from there. But now we've learned how to pick up different items. So,
Well, and he's very modest. He won't tell you that he's learned how to make a lot of stuff too. He casts a lot of the things that we now put on our equipment and our gear and our guns. So he's, like I said, he's very modest. He's learned how to resin cast things. I call him up and say, "Dude, I need this cast. Can you make me 9 or 10 bolts?" "Yeah, what size?" Yeah, you pick him up, or he drops them by the house, he drops them off, or whatever. We've done barter systems. It's like, "Here, you give me this, I'll do this for you." That's just the way it works, and that's one of the things that's crucial, is that when you know somebody who can do the things, we know our seamstress, we know who casts, that kind of stuff. Painting is my forte. I can make plastic look like metal. People freak out when they see that. They're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. He makes this," and people say, "You can't walk in that. It's too heavy. It's all made of metal." Nope. It's the ability to create the illusion and make it look real. So, and then he's definitely a master of that, and both of us have come a long way from the time we started looking at some of the original stuff we had and looking, "Oh, that's pretty funny."
I was just telling Jim that there's a lot of things I would change on this, and a lot of people, it's perfect. I mean, there's a lot of things that I would redo that I've learned along the way. But the same thing that I said I couldn't do, and we were talking with a few people not too long ago at one of the events that we went to with Jocelyn, and in talking with them, they are in the Star Wars community, and they're talking to us about wanting to jump over to steampunk, and I'm telling them, "Hey, we could do both, and we could work something out to where we could actually do both, because I still want to do a Mandalorian to this day." But a lot of the sites that I went to now that were just starting up or were not around, but now there's sites out there that you can get with us later on if you all are interested, or if you go online and say, "How do I make this?" And you'll find it's knowing some of the key words, which is what we didn't know when we first started. Right. And just because they're doing it and making it for a particular genre, it doesn't have to be made that way only. I mean, I learned how to make some of the helmets and stuff that I did because the Star Wars guys were doing it that way. Or some of the folks for the 40K Warhammer, which is a tabletop gaming thing, and they make full-on suits. That's how I made one of my larger battle armors that I made. But all of that, even right down to miniatures, I use a lot. And again, Jim and I were just talking about that. On every single one of the things that looks like a rivet in this helmet and on this head, except for these 4 right here, are all split peas. What you make split pea soup out of a split pea bag. And I bought that bag in 2000 and 11. I still have half of it, and I've used them. Any small bolt you see on there, small rivet, that's what that is. It's an old Disney trick. And I either went to a con or I saw it online, and Walt Disney used to use it for miniatures. And I picked it up and did it. But the funny thing, or wasn't funny at the time, but downside is that I have some of them where they were on feet of something that I made, or these hats were stored in the closet. And we had a cat that liked to do the catch and release program. Bring them in the house, play with them, and release them. And the cat had a very healthy diet of split peas. Ate every single one of them. This hat. I'm sorry. What did I say?
A cat.
Sorry. The mouse ate before we caught it. Not the cat, but ate every single split pea off of every one of the hats except for this one. So. I had to learn a hard lesson with that one, but
which was funny because I told him, I said, all my bolts and stuff are actual rivets, brass rivets. You can get them there at Ace Hardware. They're tacks, upholstery tacks.
Oh,
They're made of brass already. So I was like, this is really cool.
And then you painted them black.
Then I painted them black. So not a joke, because I didn't want the thrower to look like, I wanted it to look like a train, cast metal train engine. You know, I wanted the character that carries this is supposed to be an automaton. It's me in this outfit with a different mask and a head, but he's supposed to be a robot. He has no concept of what weight is or anything like that. So I wanted it to look like it came off of a train, and I think I accomplished it. It looks very riveted and welded and everything, but. Yeah, I ended up painting everything black. So if you scratch it off, you'll see brass underneath.
But you can even use, like, you know, the little things. I know a lot of younger folks won't know what they are, but they go through regular whole notebook paper.
Brad. It's a brad.
They're called brads.
They're called brads.
Really?
Yes.
But it goes in, and then you peel open both sides and flatten it down on the backside.
That's what I used as rivets, as brads.
But they sell those things. You can get for like $1. You can get like 100 of them inside of there. I've used those and just pressed them through. A lot of this stuff's made out of foam. Like his jaw's made out of foam. All of the skirting and everything here is made out of foam. You just push that through there and flatten it out, and put a little glue on the back of it, and you're done. You've got a brass bolt or a rivet. You know, now is in your outfit.
If you're interested in doing it, I suggest walking through a hardware store and just looking at different things. And you see things and you're like, huh. Because I like to use the acronym KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Why am I going to make something if somebody else has already made it? My shoulder pads. Not you guys. My shoulder pads. What do you think is made out of?
They look like metal.
They look metal.
Yeah.
They are knee pads.
I know.
They're knee pads. If you go to where the concrete section is, or the knee pads of any hardware store, these are the cheap. These I know, I'm telling secrets, and it's like, shut up. These are the cheap plastic knee pads, or they're just like foam that you use for when you're working on the ground or whatever. And I added them on and bolted them on. And again, some of these are actual brass bolts, and some of them are ones that he created for me after the effect. So I wanted the real brass bolts because it locked them in and kept them tight. So before I had my seamstress, I would get all the stuff you can get surplus. The jacket itself is surplus, but I don't know why the Czechoslovakian people have little tiny arms. I got the jacket, I swear to God, it ended right here. Anything from Czechoslovakia, their arms do not match the body. This jacket will fit a big guy like me, but the arms stop here. Must have had big giant gloves. That's all I can think
They
of.
went up to their shoulders.
I have no idea. So I put it on. My wife laughed at me. The sleeves came off. Literally ripped them off. You can see I didn't cut them. I wasn't nice. I really ripped the sleeves off. I wanted the very kind of savage look.
You sure that wasn't battle damage?
It was battle damage.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to create. When you start in something like this, you have to figure out. My first character, I don't even know what I was. I think it was an airship first officer when I went to the 8th Aurora Fair. I had a bowler, I had a vest, I had some Levi's, and I had a jacket. It was just whatever I could throw together, kind of hodgepodge from what I had seen on the internet. Then I said, nope, I don't want to do that. I want to create my own character. He said, he wants to create his own character. That's what you have to focus on. What do you want to be? As you can tell, a lot of times, steampunk, a lot of it is browns, tans, brass, things like that. I'm the anti-steampunk. I wear black. I like to wear black. I'm the bad guy. Everybody knows in a movie, right? Who wears black? The bad guy always wears black, okay? So that's my character. He's the bad guy, so to speak. Perception is what everybody perceives. So, the Gentleman Robot, it's kind of funny because we're partners, yet our characters are against each other. So that's the neat thing. We're friends, and yet we're enemies. So,
Frenemies.
we're frenemies.
Just beat it out of
A lot of the people that we know all have their own characters. They create their own character cast. There are people that we know that if you get into the steampunk world, you'll be like, you know these people? And we're like, yeah. We knew them when they were just,
Some people, if you held a gun to my head today, I couldn't tell you their real last names.
because that's what we know
That's
them
what
as.
they know them as, or they have a Facebook site that only has that name, and I know them by that first name. For years, I didn't know Ember's real first name.
That's all right. You don't need to. Everybody knows who it is.
I know.
And that's the funny part of it. When you get into this world and you get to meet these people, you address them and call them by their created names. A lot of people don't call me by, they don't say Paul, they say Baron. And I answer to it. That's me.
Yeah, for the longest time, I didn't even want to do a persona. I was really hell-bent on not doing one, and
Look what he's got now. Right?
yeah.
Not only is a persona,
A lot.
he's the president of Steampunk at the Wild Wild West Con last year. So this is his actual, I was going to say, shameless plug.
There you go.
Shameless plug. The funny part was he ran against, somebody made a bumper sticker that said Cthulhu for president. If you know anything about the Cthulhu H.P. Lovecraft series, Cthulhu is this ancient elder god that's going to show up in the world and destroy it. So he runs against him. I happen to have a Cthulhu.
And others.
Yeah, don't forget the others.
Yes.
There was no others. It was Robot. Oh, sorry. Madame Askew. It was Madame Askew and then the Cthulhu. So I happen to have a very close friend of mine purchased me a Cthulhu head. It's ungodly expensive. It's incredibly detailed. So I created the character and I went and basically showed up as Cthulhu. People went, wow, I'm crazy. We got some pictures. Actually, we never did really see each other, in passing, but and
I
that was all
put in
worked
a
out.
vote for you too. I have pictures actually.
We have photos?
Yeah,
Voting
yeah,
for
we did.
everybody.
Photographic
I was caught voting for them. Actually, I was stealing votes. But, so I had to put a
Long
hat.
tentacles.
So, but we create these little storylines, and it falls into it. It falls into place. And it's fun for us because we're creating little backstories in our characters, and that's something if you're interested in steampunk that you can do. You can have just as much fun showing up wearing street clothes to a steampunk event because unlike a lot of us, a lot of other areas, we don't judge you. You can be a steampunk light or steampunk heavy as you want. You could show up wearing a top hat, and we love you.
Yep.
You show up wearing nothing.
Well, and I think that's the big difference.
We're not.
We applaud your
huge
bravery.
on-
Yes. Leather belt.
Right.
There you go.
That's really cool. You got some brass accents on it. That's cool. We're very accepting. Usually this is. I met people that were big in the business before I ever even came along, and yet they were so warm and welcoming that it made me feel like this is definitely a world that I like to be in. So I do know some of the Star Wars people, and they're like. They're very tenuous, they're very rigid, they're very tight about their events and their costuming and stuff.
Not all of
Cliquish.
us.
Not all. No.
Well, and some of the ones that are in the main clubs, it's again, he fell in and told me a bunch of stories about how rigid they are for the Civil War reenactment.
Oh, yeah.
And
They suck all the
I
fun
mean,
out of it.
yeah, and I mean, it's just, that was one of the things that I realized when we started doing it. There is no characters other than the ones that we've created or friends of ours that have created, and some, a few bands that are out there that play steampunk, and people have emulated those guys. But really, folks don't tend to emulate too many other folks. Now, we tend to mash it up and do, we had a friend of ours that got those little Heelys, I think that's what they're called, where the wheels are in there. I'm looking at you because you probably know the name of them. I know we don't. But he dressed up in like dark browns and oranges and stuff like that, and had a hat and a cane, and he was a steampunk BB-8.
Yeah,
And he would roll along.
The parasol.
Yeah, and it had the parasol, so it looked like the wheel part. But I mean,
was
we've
awesome.
mashed up to where you
light.
blend in from different, everything from Marvel to DC to Star Wars to you name it. We've brought it in and made it steampunk to keep it fun and to do that. Or again, bring in and make up your own character if you want. But
Superheroes, that's fun.
superheroes.
Absolutely.
We have friends of ours that do all of the DC, from Batman, Joker. These we even did.
Green Lantern.
We even did our own of Assassin's Creed, where we made one and we steampunked them to do it of the Assassin's Creed. And Wizard of Oz. We did Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz, yeah.
That was easy. We already had a tin man. So.
Don't forget.
All I had to do is put a funnel on his head.
We could
and
be
we're done.
different days, guys.
Yeah, we do mashups with pretty much anything. Anything that you like, you can do a mashup with it. It's nothing is taboo. Nobody's going to tell you you can't do that. If they do, brush them off. Brush them off. They're not worth your effort or time. Just brush them off, okay? So,
But I mean, well, we can open up real quick if anybody's got questions.
right.
If anybody asks, what is steampunk? Johnson was asking that question.
Well, I have two. Where did you get that brain-looking thing?
So
And I want this lady to tell us how lady steampunkers go about this.
Get up there, kiddo.
we can take a seat and let the ladies
She
come up.
tried to get out of it,
We
but I
could talk
couldn't.
about the brain first.
Someone of you, yeah.
So the cool thing about this is that we were doing monsters for one of the events, so I decided to make Frankenstein head my own version. It's already steampunk anyways, Frankenstein is, but I decided to make something different. But the brain itself is the actual cut off top of a Jello mold that you get for during the Halloween time frame. No. So I just cut off a small piece up in the top, and then the mask itself, you can actually touch it. Let me be here when you do it, but you can come up after this and touch it, but because it's sitting on there barely. But I put foam behind it, like upholstery foam, so that it has like the feel of a fleshy. But I bought the mask for like $5 at the spirit store, and then I just made everything else that's on here. But I put in plugs in the back. There's vents in the back to let heat out because I learned a hard lesson at the event where we met. I was wearing this and I didn't have a fan in it, and I had switched out, put these eyes in so that I could see better. But I didn't have a fan because a lot of air came in on the other ones, but they were more narrow. And my eyes sit back here where I can't see very well. I have no peripheral vision. I can only see what's in front of me, not down, up. But somebody, my wife, decided to do a conga line. And I had this on, and it was warm. We're in a basement of the convention center, I think it's called, in
It was
Bisbee.
a dance.
And we're doing a conga line running around. All of a sudden, I started seeing pretty colors, and then it got narrower. And I realized it wasn't vision, so I sat down. And I don't know when I sat down, but that following weekend,
carbon monoxide
Yeah.
is not your friend.
a
Carbon
fan was put
dioxide is
in.
not your friend.
A fan was put in that following weekend.
There's a reason why I built this, or had this built for me, so that I can talk and breathe. And so the carbon dioxide goes out.
I'll tell you what, I did have a hard time though to caveat what you said about the ladies, and then we can let whoever the ladies that
Any of them
want to stand up.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find boots. I wanted to have high boots, and I couldn't find a pair of boots. I ended up finding one pair of black boots that were like motorcycle boots, at the Buffalo Exchange in Tucson, and I know I stole them practically for as much as they were charging for them, but they're like steel toe. They don't bend that well. They're very uncomfortable, but gosh, I was going to have high boots. I even went as far as trying to find ladies' boots until my wife and daughter gave me a hard time and took pictures of me. Thank gosh, Facebook. We weren't on Facebook at the time, so I didn't make it on there. But I won't say it's easy, and not by no means, but there's a lot of things at the time I thought, until I really started looking at it differently. I thought there was more things for ladies, but I realized that I didn't have to go purely 1800s, which is another thing that he touched on earlier. Like some of the other genres that are out there, it's either time or genre. We had friends of ours that immediately went down to Tombstone, and went to and started buying actual pants, shirts, vests, everything. You know, that they said, I've got to be that time period, and then they put a little something on their hat, and they said, okay, well, I'm period now. And I went, it's not about being period. It's about having fun with it and doing whatever. Because there is no real robots did not roam around, you know, in that time period. So,
What?
Yes, they did.
so anyway, in our world,
How did you decide on him?
How did I decide to make him?
Yes, become the gentleman.
Again, it was like one of those things that is kind of like Pinocchio. I always wanted to be a robot, and I can remember as he did wanting to dress up, and I sent off and had my parents send a check for $1.50 off to this company, and I was going to get a full robot outfit when it came in, the big boxy kind, you know, from back in the 70s, early 70s. And what showed up was plans on how to make it out of boxes. And I'll tell you what, I was a very depressed young little boy after that, because I thought I was getting for $1.50, you know. So, but when we started doing all this, I realized I wanted to do something. And the first iteration of him, like I said, he had more narrow eyes. He had the little drain plug that you get at the hardware store or wherever. You put in there it's only that big around and it's that deep, and you drop it in there so food doesn't go down small drains. That's what I looked through. But I had antenna sticking out of the holes in the back of here, and I had mechanical arms, and I made boots, which are also in this book. And everybody said I looked like a steampunk ant-man. And so afterwards, Sabrina, I decided to make him a top hat. Took off the antennas, which they were antenna, but not antennae. But anyway, made a top hat, and then I put on we went to the, what's it called? The Tucson thrift store down on 4th Avenue. And I bought a gray jacket with tails that opens up like this and has tails, and I put on a pair of pants and had the top hat, and she says, wow, you look like an actual robot that's a gentleman. And she was like, gentleman robot, and the rest is history. So, but she was also the one that told me to put a fan in.
Which time?
Now we know what you're
Every
bringing.
Yes, always.
Yes.
Every time.
Yes.
Question, what year exactly was this steampunk?
Steampunk, started in 1882.
Looks like 1982. 1882.
1982.
It started in 1982,
1982.
mimicking 1882.
And I don't remember the gentleman's name.
KW Jeter
That's
coined the term.
And he wanted to think of something that the actual punk, like punk rock bands and all that was out. And from what, if I remember it correctly, but he wanted to think of some sort of a name that was, and he knew it was in the Victorian time frame, which there was steam was prominent and being used throughout that time. So he took steam and put punk on the end of it, and it became steampunk. But the funny thing is that I've been through, I really like the industrial time period. I like all of that with the architecture, all of that. And I literally tripped over it on accident, like I said a little bit ago. and never heard of it until 2010. So it's been out for quite some time. But I think all of it, I met Jocelyn at, I think because it was
Tucson Comic Con.
That's right.
and we were at
You had
Tucson
the
Comic Con,
gray
and I'm
jacket
walking
that
around in the
puffed at
helmet,
that time.
and it was my first appearance as the gentleman robot. And they came running over to me and said, "Oh my gosh, we got to take some pictures, and then we have to introduce you to our friend." And then they said, after we met Jocelyn, she said, "I have a club," and we said, "Let me guess, you're in Phoenix," which is a different story. But she says, "No, we're here in Tucson," which, again, that's only an hour and a half from where we live. But everybody that we know most of the time prior to that were always from Phoenix. But we were like, great, and that friendship started right then, that quick, and next thing you know, we're so.
The funny part of that story
I
is
still
I'm at
have
the same
pictures of
convention.
this.
I see them. I don't meet them. I don't know them, but I walk by and go, "That's cool." Don't think a thing about it again. I see some pictures later on and say, "Wait a minute, I know you guys. I saw you," and they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Walk right by you guys. Saw you, never said a word." It was like a year later after that's when I met them. So we're all in the same circle. We just needed Steampunk to bring us together. But it was kind of funny because he gave me a description of what he was wearing, and I remember seeing her, and it's like, don't miss the red hair. It's like, I know these people. Where have I seen them before? Looked through some of their older photos once we became friends on Facebook, and I said, I know exactly who they are. Didn't know them, ended up meeting them, friends ever since.
But I was just really surprised just with the different things that I've been into sci-fi and all
Okay,
of the.
there's a good question. Who here is into sci-fi, science fiction? Raise your hand. All right. Now science fiction. How about horror? Anybody into horror? Okay. Fantasy. Okay. Fantasy like Dungeons and Dragons and Knights and King Arthur and all that. Okay. So pretty much everybody here has got some sort of background in something other than reality. Who likes reality? You like something other than reality, because let's just face it, reality gets boring. We go through a humdrum drug every day. Okay? My mother, bless her, she was a wonderful mother, but she said to me, "Why do you always choose the bad guys? Why do you always choose the Black Knight? Why do you always choose the guy?" And I said, "Mom, in my real life, I'm a good guy. All right? I'm a correctional officer. I've always been into law enforcement." I said, "But when you want to do something different and step out, you want to play the bad guy." So that's why we're black. That's why I wear a mask. People say the same thing. Okay, Princess Bride fans here, why do you wear a mask? They're just terribly comfortable. I think everybody will be wearing it. He wears a mask. Almost everybody. You wear a mask. We all have some form of other where we wear a mask. So it's kind of like I kind of giggle about it, but everybody wears some kind of mask at some point. It allows me to be away from who I normally am and to enjoy myself and to be more relaxed and to be more open. A lot of times I don't approach people when I'm in my normal persona. I'm very guarded. I keep myself to myself. When I play and do Steampunk and do the other games that I play and things like that, I'm much more open. So this is probably my way of branching out, making friends, and being a more social, because I'm not a social person in my normal life. So this is that area in my life that allows me to be much more open and to be free. So anybody into Steampunk, anybody into any of those backgrounds or whatever, they kind of know what I'm talking about. You get to start talking about certain things, you have a conversation, it blows up. Somebody mentions something you should go by. Hey, I saw this, boom. That's all it takes. So.
Yep. You've got a question? Go ahead.
Are there any ideas for helping you to make characters?
Like,
Sure.
how would you mean?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Invent characters.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite? What's your favorite game?
Yeah. What's your favorite? Yeah, I Star Wars. We know that.
I do like this one game called Mortal Kombat.
There you go.
Any particular character?
Mortal Kombat.
Great
Okay,
characters.
So, depends on which character you want to create, right? Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Scorpion.
How did you know?
Okay, so if you look carefully, if I was to take this off and put on my balaclava, which is a hood, this mask is very Scorpion-esque, right?
You look
This-
cold, you should put it on.
So that's the different ways you do. Take the character, get pictures of it, right? You can go online. I'm sure you're an online kind of guy. Google, right? So you look at Google, you look at the pictures. And then you can create stuff from that.
Halloween stores.
Halloween stores, you can pick up little bits and bobbles and put them all together.
The neat thing
Scorpion
about
would
Halloween
be
stuff is you can
perfect
cut
in a
it apart.
steampunk environment.
Even something like this. And there's even tutorials where you can make these out of like craft foam, like you buy at Hobby Lobby, the thin foam. And they have tutorials where you make something like that and then paint it to look so it, like we were talking about earlier, where you can make it look metal. But that's what we were talking about earlier, where you can take something and you can mash it into another character and make it look steampunk. But you can go to sites where the actual people make the character that you want to build. So for, in this case, Scorpion, you can go on those sites and type in, how do I make a Scorpion mask? And they'll show you how to make it. At that point, it's up to you how you want to make it. If you want to make it look more like a steampunk type genre, or if you want it to look like something else.
Mashing it up with.
Right. There's people that have taken, if you type in, what is it? It's Samurai Star Wars, and they've taken where they've made full outfits of all the main characters, and they have them look like they're in samurai gear, like Darth
Japanese
Vader.
style.
Yes. Oh, it's amazing. So that's how you can do it. And there's, like I said, if you want to ask us later, but there's sites that are out there that tell you how to make all of this, and like I said, then you just flip-flop it and make it more steampunk. There is a common joke that goes through steampunk is to slap some gears on it and call it steampunk. And believe me, I've done that. So, but it's, in
Gears
some
and
cases, yes. So we go to a lot of thrift stores. You can go to the spirit store at the end, right after Halloween's over, and get a lot of that stuff for 30-50% off of the current price. And they even sell inexpensive bowlers and top hats now as well. So we shop. Again, I think a lot of it is how you turn it and make it into steampunk is the main thing that we have come and started to do. Like you mentioned, like the bolts. A lot of the bolts that I make so that I don't have to carry all that weight around, even though that is heavy, it's just not as heavy as it looks because there's very little real metal on this. Just looking at it from here, the only thing that's real are these right here. Everything else is fake metal bolts or resin casts that I made. And the first set of resin casts I made, I bought, you know, the colorful clay that you get at Walmart for making animals and characters or whatever you want to make. It's oil-based, so it never hardens. And I would push actual bolts into it, and I used cooking spray that my wife used for baking. And I sprayed cooking spray in it to get the parts out, and then I just use resin that they use for fiberglass for cars. Until I learned other places where I could go and buy molds and do different. I even was mentioning at the gym here, now they make a lot of this stuff for silicone for you put in your kitchens, for you to like pot holders, and they have these things that you set on the counter, and they have this hexagon pattern in them, and it's for setting a hot pan when you bring it out of the oven or whatever, and you set it on there. I saw those hex patterns, and I realized every time I make something out of resin, I have a bunch of little bit extra. I pour it into there, and then I spray it first, let it dry, and then I pop them out, and there's all of these small hexagon things you see here are from that. I just popped them out and made a bunch of different sizes. I use that now so that I don't have to have mice come in.
So you have an advantage that a lot, like when we were growing up as kids, there was such thing as the internet.
Yes.
No such thing as Google or Yahoo or any of these different things. But so take advantage of that. How to anything. It's on there. How to build Scorpion mask. Boom, pops up. How to build steampunk Scorpion mask. I bet there's something there. So anytime, that's your first get-go. I will tell you that right now. You can look for some old crusty dogs like us to help you out. But for the most part, there's somebody on Facebook that's already done it. They've probably done it faster or easier than we've done it. So when they learn from the mistakes of others. That was my huge thing I try to tell people. If somebody's telling you don't do this because this happens, please listen to what they're saying because they've been through it. Don't put super glue on all surfaces because you can't get your fingers apart. Super glue accelerator, it works great until it touches your skin and your super glue because it's instantly and you have nothing. You're done. You're not pulling your hands apart. But it makes, because I mean, if anybody's ever built models, you go to put the two pieces together, super glue is supposed to dry in how many seconds? 30, 10, or whatever. You let it go and plink. Really? Plink. And you're like, oh, they make this accelerator. You stick it on, and you spray it, and you're like, awesome. You're part of the model now.
And
so
those
are the things, take your time and learn.
Certain things work in different areas, like a lot of people use hot glue. When we first started, I'd say that about 90% of what's holding this together is currently hot glue. Because that's all I used back then. And there is, if I had to take that now to go to some of the events that we do in Phoenix, if I didn't have a way to immediately get it out of the vehicle and get it in there, if it has to stay in the vehicle for any time period, or if it's under any kind of stress, the hot glue will separate. But something as simple as overlaying this onto here where there's no tension, that hot glue will stay there forever and it won't come off, no matter how hot the vehicle gets. But anything that's bending and has the hot glue right here, it'll pop off the minute it gets any kind of warmth to it. So we had to learn those lessons along the way. But again, if you're just starting out, to answer your question even more, is that by looking up how to make this or how to make that, to start learning how to do it, then you can kind of venture from there and you can try different types of glues for different aspects.
And don't ever be afraid to ask, what if? You look at it and it says, you have to get this. What if I don't use that? What if I use something else? What if I use foam card instead of cardboard? Or what if I use the soft foam material to make this instead of using a more rigid? If you ever watch any of these cosplay shows, the newest and latest and greatest thing is Warbler and thermoplast. That's great. Do you have $70? Because a little tiny sheet is $70. I don't have $70 to waste on that. No. So you come up and you go, what if I use this? So, and they don't tell you interesting things. We have friends of ours that build some amazing suits. They learned at 127 degrees in Phoenix that Warbler doesn't hold its shape. It begins to come apart.
It's basically glue, like Elmer's glue and wood chips, basically, is what it is, and it forms these plastic these sheets. They like he said, they work great. There's the one lady did this entire Wonder Woman outfit, the new one from the movie, and I mean it's amazing. But if they were to wear that or stay in the sun, or if it's an outdoor event, it would probably start to fall apart or change shape. So even some of the things that I work a lot with, most of the stuff you see on here and on the outside of this is all made out of, it's term when you look for things, and that's another thing is that it's EVA. Don't ask me the scientific name for what that stands for, because I couldn't tell you. But it's exercise foam. It's the little square pieces. They make them for kids' rooms that have the ABCs on one side and the numbers on the other side, and puzzle pieces, but they're gray, and you can get at Hobby Lobby or Harbor Freight or Lowe's or Home Depot, Walmart. You can buy these square sheets. They come usually 4 or 5 to a pack, and they're about anywhere from $11 to $20, and they have these little puzzle pieces that one side fits into this side, and they put together, and you put them in a gym or in a room, a playroom, and they're just on the floor for rubber. Now I look at that and I'm going, oh, I can make so many things with you. Why are you on the floor? But basically those things you heat up with a heat gun to get some of the shapes and the certain cuts that you do a certain way to make it fold just right. And now I use, like I said, different types of glues to put that together. which is one of the things you have to get, permission from your parents on. Some of the glues and stuff are unsafe, if you don't have the proper equipment. But
they're unsafe when you're an adult too.
Yeah, especially when you're not wearing.
There's a reason they tell you put a respirator on. Please put the respirator on.
But
because you sit there for a little while and you're like, wow, light is cool, and you realize, oh, I'm pretty high.
Cancer risk too, don't they?
Yeah, a little bit. There's cancer from the sun and water too, but that effect you have is going to be with you for a little while. So you want to just, put the respirator on.
You can add 2 outfits. You can make things that are from scratch. Like I said, a lot of this is, there's a bunch of parts that are on here that are store-bought that I just repurposed. The part that goes up inside his jaw when it opens and closes is, the foam brushes that's got a foam square end on it that you dip inside of the paint, and then you paint whatever you're painting with the foam brush instead of bristles. And I had a bunch of them because I was using the foam to put on to different, the resins onto different things that I was making, like the ball back here, for instance. Well, it gets rock hard afterwards when that stuff dries, so I would take it off. I ripped it off one day, and I kept that, and I said, I might need that. I threw it in a drawer, and it sat there for about 2 years until I needed something to go in and out when I opened and closed my jaw that would rotate on the end of this pinion. And I remembered I had those. How, I have no idea, but I remember they were in there, and it made a perfect insert. My only concern at that point was hopefully this pipe didn't scratch off the paint. But I learned from a guy that does miniatures, and he worked on almost all the Star Wars movies, the first 3. His name's Fawn Davis, and he was at Phoenix Comic Con one year talking about miniatures. And he said one of the cool things that they did for making the miniatures to make them seem more real on film was they put something real in there. So because the human brain looks at something and sees something that's real, and it assumes automatically that everything else is real. And so what they would do is put like a little strip of metal on a doorway that went over the top of it that was real metal. Everything else was all cardboard, plastic, resin, whatever, but that wasn't. And I've done that throughout pretty much almost all my builds. I put something real on there to make it and kind of trick that, to kind of get maybe a little bit of the same idea of what he said. But that's one little trick that I've learned along the way. If I can pass that on, but that's the thing is that there was a lot of time where I sat researching stuff over and over and over and over constantly, and spent a lot of research and didn't build one thing for weeks because I was doing so much research. And but like you said, now you have the internet, so it's awesome to be able to do that. Do you have any other questions while we?
And back to the women.
Ladies.
Oh, you're not
Well,
getting
you didn't
away.
think you were just going to get dressed up for nothing, did you?
So, girls rule, boys drool.
Right.
Exactly. So it's not really any different from the women. A lot of people that I know like to still dress in the pants. You can go to the thrift store for a lot of the costuming pieces. We have Miss Debbie here who does amazing work, Miss Jocelyn who does amazing work. They're both seamstresses. A lot of people don't know how to sew anymore. And that's the nice thing about steampunk is we also work with Tucson Steampunk Society, and they do workshops. We'll show you how to sew. You want to learn how to use that sewing machine that's stuck in the closet? Well, come on down. Let's have a class. Let's teach. So that's the nice part about steampunks is we get together and we'll start experimenting with these things. If you ever want any ideas for costumes, this corner over here are the dealers when it comes to that. Okay?
We are dealers.
But
Yes.
Look at
Steampunk.
So, but I mean, for the women, there's just as much as there is for the men. It's not a genre that's going to say, oh, well, since it's from the Victorian era, you can only do this. That's the beauty of steampunk. It's an alternate timeline, so we can make it what we want to make it. We don't have to be stuck being the beautiful lady in the carriage, riding side saddle on the horse. You can be an airship pirate, and you can be smuggling.
Pirates.
But you can be pretty too if you want.
You can be pretty if you want to be pretty, or you can be gritty. I love it when I see an engineer that has the goggles put up and her face is covered with soot. I mean, that is so authentic when it comes to having the costume. And that's another thing to think about. If you're going to be that character, what is that character going to have? Well, I'm an airship pirate, so I'm going to have, all my accoutrement that's going to go with that airship pirate. I even have a parachute backpack that I like to wear with this costume, because what happens if the airship gets shot out of the sky? I'm going to have some way to save myself.
Go down with the ship.
So
Drop down
you guys go there. I'll be right there. No, but and that's one of the interesting parts about the steampunk characters when you do decide what you want to do. Also, the nice thing is that I've gone into a thrift store and I've looked at a piece of whatever, a coat, a shirt, a pair of pants or something, and then I've built an outfit around that. I may not necessarily have gone in there for that purpose, but the next thing I know, here comes that character. Some people, they'll find a hat and they'll think, oh, what would go with this hat? So cool. Let's get the goggles going. Let's do the next step is the shirt. Let's do the pants or the skirt or whatever you want to do after that. And then the outfit comes together from there. A lot of John Floyd will start putting this stuff together. He may not necessarily have had this vision in his head at the beginning. It may have transformed as he was going along. And that's going to happen with a lot of people who do costuming. Sometimes it's, can I find it? If I can't find it, can I make it? If I can't make it, then I need to, switch it up. Maybe it's not going to be what I originally thought it was, but then it turns into this whole other monster that comes out of the closet.
Sometimes your ideas come when you're on your way home from Phoenix Comic-Con and somebody falls asleep and my brain's bored and I come up with characters after I just said we're going to take a break and not build anything else.
After there was a promise made that we could at least have 3 months where there was nothing going on in the shop. No. I wake up and all of a sudden we're making a Yeti and there's and that's part of the fun too. I mean, is having your friends or your spouse or your dealer who turns to you and says, we're going to be Klingons. We're doing this. And then they're going to dress like Kiss.
Are you doing that?
We're doing Kiss Klingons for Star Trek Convention.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, a lot of that stuff is bouncing ideas off of your friends.
Star Child.
That's the best part, is if you can get a group of people who are interested in the same things that you are. And, next thing you know, it's this whole other thing. And then you start researching these conventions that you can go to. Old Tucson Studios, I don't know if you all are aware, but the first weekend in every March, we do a convention at Old Tucson Studio. It's set in the Wild West, so there are a lot of people who like to do the gunslingers or the pirates or that kind of thing. Saloon girls, and then you think about these things, but then the fun part is they also offer different themes every year. So last year was the election, and John was named the president of Steampunk. So
the Russians.
We had a bunch of themes that went around. How did we want to do the election? And yes, you were able to buy the boat. Okay.
It
was for charity.
It was all for charity. It was the Kids Need to Read, which is what
Yay.
the Wild West Con supports every year. They always do Kids Need to Read charity promotion. So, and then this year is going to be Dinosaurs versus Robots. And I fully hope that we get some of those people dressed up in the inflatable dinosaurs. I can't wait.
Bowler.
But with like a bowler and a top hat, that's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
But we also have some people that are talking about doing dinosaur robots. So that, that'll be an interesting. But it's, it's about getting out there. It's about having fun.
There's not enough time in the day.
Yeah. Someone. So,
many ideas.
But when it comes to it, you just have to think creatively. And if you're struggling, you don't have an idea, the internet, as they said, is a wonderful resource. Just get on there. I can't tell you how many times I've gone on there and typed in something and just went, oh, that's cool, And I mean,
Pinterest
imitation.
is evil, though.
Yeah,
Pinterest is evil because you start off with one and you think you're in this idea. Next thing you know, you might have started off with an apple. By the time you're ended, it's a meteorite. You've gone the other end.
Anything you start, you're going to see other things because you start looking through it and you're like, ooh, what's that? And then 3.5 hours later, you've completely forgotten what you were originally looking for, and I've got this in mind now. How did I get that? What was I looking for to begin with? No clue. I gotta remember. So, but run with it. Have fun.
Where am I?
Remember,
Is it boots and corset?
Boots and corset, yes. You have to put on your boots first,
Yes.
then the corset. Because you can't bend over if you put the corset on first. Otherwise, I get the help. And I hate those things. Those little metal brackets, it runs on one bar. When you try to get one in, the other one does. Next thing you know, I'm looking like I'm doing bad things to her because my hand's down the front end of her.
Wow, so there's children.
And he's the good guy.
I think you need some corsetry lessons.
Right, please.
That's why I said corset. Boots first, then corset.
I will tell you right now, she's very modest. She creates a lot of great outfits as well. And there are more, yeah, but it's a design thought. There are a heck of a lot more female representatives for steampunk than male representatives for steampunk. They have huge followings. They have amazing art. They have amazing outfits. They're truly, and they're not as competitive as guys get. Guys get a little pushy, where I'm going to be better than you and that kind of stuff. But I absolutely, most of the time I will look at the women dressed as steampunk because they have such amazing outfits. And guys can't wear those. It's like, no, I ain't wearing that. No, I ain't wearing that. And it starts out very easy. Like my wife, she's like, I need boots. What is it? Payless shoes. I'm like, oh my God, you guys got awesome boots.
Yeah. Every winter, there's like, I'm just drooling. Oh my gosh, look at all the boots. And
So you run over to the men's section and you go, crap.
You get half boots down here.
So.
Then you catch them in the women's aisle.
I knew my feet won't fit most of the time.
I know a size I wear.
I bet you do.
Size 12 in ladies'
What
shoes.
size do you wear women's dresses? That's all.
I've gone as far as a kilt.
Size 8. Only your seamstress
Size
knows.
8. Yeah. What size am I?
8.
And let me tell you, if there's something you can think of, there's somebody that can. If you can't create it, there's somebody who can create it for you. Absolutely. It's my seamstress right there. I come to her with the most ungodly things and go, can you do this?
There she is.
Absolutely. And I'm like, yes. And then it's like, then she toys with me because she's working on it but not telling me. So we're like 2 weeks from the event, I'm like, and she's like, oh yeah, I can make it up, it's done. Oh, thank God. And I get over there and it's amazing. It's amazing work. We did a El Dorado Day parade, and we did Captain Nemo. And they said, we want you to be Captain Nemo. And I had a beard then, full beard, and I was like, really? So I run to her.
Tell if you don't have that now.
I know, I can't see it now. And I run to her and I say, I need a Nemo jacket. Well, let's look and see what we can do. So she creates this Nemo outfit for me, and it's amazing. And I wear it every chance I get. I love it. It's that bright, vibrant blue, and I wear the naval white pants. And I had some other people build me white gaiters that go with the boots. It's amazing. Somebody can help you, or somebody can build it for you if you really want. So don't ever let that stop you if you're getting into it. I mean, you're a youngster right now. You're like thinking, I ain't got no money. What are you talking about? Mom's not going to buy that for me. That's where you learn to start making things. Improvise. You know, start small and work your way up.
My first pair of boots that I made, and there's pictures of it, like I said, in that book right there. I can show you when we get done. I made him before he became the gentleman robot. The heel of them I thought looked really cool because it looked like an Achilles tendon, but it's the handhold for a Folgers coffee, the plastic Folgers coffee that we had. And I made one, and I went, that's cool. And I looked over, the other one was full. I had to go over and dump that into a plastic bag just so I could get the other one and make the other boot. But the front end of it was made out of a garbage can I cut in half, and then I covered it in faux leather on the outside of it. The back side is a cardboard tube.
The front is a mixing bowl for the steel toe.
Yeah, ask your mom before you do that.
Yeah.
I had to buy her a set of new bowls. But I cut a metal bowl right in half and became the toe. Because it was rounded just like this. And I thought, but
Secondhand stores, thrift shops, Goodwill, those are your friends.
stores.
Play it against sports. These look great, right? Those are just catcher shin guards. Throw a paint job on them. Bam, $5 at the Goodwill store. $5. I didn't care they're beat up. I want them beat up. I want them to look like they've been used and broken in or whatever. But adds to the persona of the character. And then all you do is you run down to Hobby Lobby because most places don't have the metallic paints. If you want to look metal, you can just learn how to paint it. There's no right or wrong. If you don't like it, start over. Practice. I did not start making plastic look like metal. Not by a long shot. Lots and lots of work, lots and lots of time and effort went into it, and my love for the genre, and love for the activity of painting. I love to paint. I love to create. So,
another question?
Any other questions?
Jeff, you want to talk about some of your stuff? Or your backpack and all that?
So my variation that I kind of glommed onto was adding lighting and motion, and you can call it Tesla punk. You know who Tesla is. So,
Want me to hold and you can...
So this started his life as a Nerf shooter. So if you've seen Wild Wild West, so I started with that, took it apart, painted it, then started adding things to it like a smokestack. Start smoking here in a minute. From HO trains. And then this piece, steam engines, they have a governor on them where when the centrifugal force is too much, the governor will come up and bleed off the extra steam so they don't blow themselves up. So I added that.
Oh my god.
Bringing that for a while this time, right? Taking arts and science, right?
I can.
Oh yeah, that would be.
So So this is a pretty basic project because it started mostly built, and I just added a few things to it.
Yeah.
Which is perfectly okay. Perfectly okay. Sometimes it's just a matter of a paint job.
Yeah.
Pre-built, paint job it, you know?
This is my mashup character of Abe Lincoln reanimated. Character named Brain Bucket Lincoln. So I did. I used the Halloween Jello mold, but instead of cutting it apart, I actually cast it in latex and just used latex paint to. This is wasabi latex paint. Mixed in there, and it took a while to get the right density, color density, and thickness so that the light would shine through. And then I wanted the lights to be interactive. So there's actually a microprocessor inside here that's controlling the lights and the rate of change of the lights. And then it's all controlled by this knob. So the microprocessor is reading the knob to see if it's changing. If it is, then it changes the rate of the lights changing. And then in the back, kind of hard to see, but there's old vacuum tubes inside there. And I looked at how to actually illuminate the vacuum tube, and a lot of them wanted 24 volts, and they don't work because they're ancient. But come to find out, where the pins all go down and it plugs in, the glass is exposed inside that bake-like plastic stuff that's around it. So I put the LED right in there, and it shines right up into the bulb, and makes it look like the tube is lighting up.
You don't know, vacuum tubes they used to put in to make your TV work back in the day. Now you can pick them up.
When they were this big,
Yeah.
this wide.
If you ever look at an electronic circuit board and all the little black squares, all what those do now, tubes used to do.
Like this.
So I kind of got it started the same way, costuming for like 30 years in Renaissance Fair, and had pretty much done everything you could do. And then I found steampunk. It's like, wow, there's everything, and there's time travel, so there's really anything. And my background's always been in software and electronics and stuff. I was like, well, if I can marry that up and costuming, this would be awesome. So this is my Brain Bucket Lincoln. The first thing I did was the backpack that's over there, and learned a lot of lessons with that. John was talking about, don't use real parts, because that thing is about 50 pounds, but it's a real, the box is a Dewey Decimal index card box from a library.
That's where you used to go to.
Or the internet. To go find the book you wanted on a shelf on the other end of the building, you had to go through cards first.
You know those weird numbers in the libraries? Don't learn how to use anymore. And then the frame is actually a Swiss Army backpack. So I got the look of it looking antique, but it's because it really is antique and it's really heavy.
And the brass thing on the left, that's a fire extinguisher, right?
Yeah, I got that in Bisbee, down in one of the basements. Didn't know what it was, and it was kind of broken, and it's perfect. I have broken. That's exactly what I want.
It's
So
made out of solid brass.
That's right, it's 50 pounds.
yeah.
Well, and that's the lure for me was I started looking at brass. And I saw a lot of these guys that we know, the Rose Brothers, they build a lot of their stuff out of brass and wood. And then the first brass one I built, I started carrying it around, and I realized, I'm not carrying this around the entire con, are you crazy? Then I said, I can paint plastic and make it look like metal, and a lot of people want that. They say, hey, can you build me a gun? Yes, I can. I can build you anything you want for a price.
I'd say, I just found out this weekend that, or last weekend, that Thomas Williford, which is Amazing Steampunk, He's been in it for years.
Seems
All
like-
all of his stuff that he makes it, where you see the brass, I'm looking over here because it was just amazing to me. That brass that's on there, he puts it on Sintra, which is what they make like gun holsters and stuff like that out of. That's the hard plastic. He makes the base of it, then he cuts out the thin leather and wraps over top of it, and then puts the thin brass underneath there, and then covers it with all the swirly leather on there. That brass is so thin, he cuts it with a pair of regular household scissors. It's that thin. And the way it looks like, and the way it feels in weight, that it's solid brass. And I thought, oh my gosh, how does he do all that? He just cuts it out. I watched him cut out a square with a pair of household scissors, and it's just little slivers of it.
And that thin brass you can get at Hobby Lobby.
Yep.
In big rolls.
And I was sitting there playing around with different brass pieces on something, on the boots that I was talking about. I put a small strip of brass, and I cut that out with a pair of tin snips and beat that thing into submission just to get it to wrap around where my feet go. And then, like I said, now here it is, been 5 years later, and I realize what he's done, that I could have done something similar to that and just cut it, but I went a different route, and I faux do it, and it's a lot lighter, so. But
The backpack, or one of the things we're talking about, finding stuff at thrift stores and whatever. So I'm always looking for a little electronic things, like Target has a counter or a little end cap, and they'll have weird little electronic like finger lights they'll stick on your fingers. And I've used those in different projects, and they're actually cheaper than buying the batteries that are in them. Yeah, it's cheaper to buy a new one than to replace the batteries. Like the plasma ball on there is a desktop USB plasma ball. And so since it's USB, when I wear it on my back, I use a phone charger, portable phone charger, rechargeable battery for a phone. And then when I plug it in, I just use a wall board that would charge a phone and plug it in, and then it can run like that. So I'm always looking for little electronic lights and something to turn into something else, and they're usually really cheap.
Well, isn't it the EL wire that's on?
Yeah, and this, I don't know if you see this blinking. Yeah. So this is EL ribbon, and then the controller goes inside the hat. You can get this, I got it online when I first found it, but now you can buy it at Walmart in the bike section. They sell them to put on your bikes. And it doesn't last forever because it kind of works on the same principle as fluorescent light bulbs. Fluorescent light bulbs are a tube, and then the inside is coated. Same thing with this, there's a coating, but since it's in a flexible, every time it moves and bends, that coating starts to chip off, and it doesn't hold up too well. The ribbon holds up a little better.
It doesn't take as much punch either.
Yeah.
It's a flat surface versus bendable.
any other questions?
Yeah, is there any other questions? I don't know, if we're gonna be here, I don't know what time it is right now, we gotta watch.
Is anybody doing,
Quarter to two.
sorry. Is anybody doing something in Bisbee or Tombstone or Sierra Vista that's sort of a event us newbies or wannabes or whatever you wanna call us could go look at?
Yes, social calendar.
Yeah, yes. We will probably be doing a Steampunk Invasion in August in Bisbee. We've done that the last 2 years. It's been really successful. We're looking at doing something in Tombstone as well during the summer, so please keep an eye out for that. You can follow the Tucson Steampunk Society, and we'll have all that information posted. These delightful people are all part of that conglomeration of steampunks. We try and provide events in southern Arizona as well as in the Tombstone area, in the Tucson area.
And then,
And El Dorado. We always do that.
yeah, we always do
El Dorado every year.
float entry for the
Yes.
not float, but parade entry for the
Our we dream of a float.
Yes.
We're getting there.
We're getting, we're
And
almost
again,
there.
they're modest because we usually take a prize. We take a prize almost
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah, we're
So,
proud. We got best in show last year.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
But
We
if
have
you
one
want to
here.
keep up to date with the events,
Somebody has an announcement to make.
the Tucson Steampunk Society is on Facebook, as
Yes.
well as Meetup.
Meetup.com.
I'm pretty sure that second annual Comic-Con over at Cochise College is going to be in February.
It's the first.
It's the weekend before Wild West Con.
10th.
So it's the last
I think it's
weekend
the
in
February.
No, it isn't. It's the second weekend in February.
Yes, this is the 10th or 11th, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna go do the Star Trek. In fact, I've got several people that are stopping by my house that weekend for consultation. Because they're gonna be here because the Tucson guys are coming too.
But that was one of the cool things too. Is real quick, is that we didn't think that there was anything to do, and that's why we're announcing all of these things, because quite literally that year that we took off between Wild West Con and all I could think about is I only had 2 or 3 that we could go to. We thought we could only go to these conventions, and that was the only place that we could hang out or talk about these kind of things or cosplay them. And it was only going to be Tucson Comic Con, Phoenix Comic Con, which have now changed their names, but that's it. And Wild West Con. Shortly after that, I realized we were doing so many things, I didn't have enough time on the weekends to build anything because we were doing different events. So it is very fun. We love it, as you can tell, and the more the merrier. So,
and this is a really big event. I think isn't it the second largest attended in the U.S.?
Yes.
This side of the Mississippi.
Steampunk World's Fair in New Jersey, Wild West Con here in Southern Arizona in Tucson, and TestinCon in Wisconsin.
And the nice thing is with the Wild West Con at Old Tucson, you get to partake of the entire park as well.
Yes.
So it's not just
Everything's open.
right. If you go there with a park pass, you can't get into some areas. You can't get into the panels and things that the steampunks can get into. So, but if you go and spend pretty much the same price for the day to get into the steampunk convention, you can access everything. So it's definitely one of the ones to go to get your feel for it, because it's really cool to see an 1880s town with steampunks walking through it, or standing in front of the saloon or the livery or the jail, and you're seeing them interacting with it, and you're like, that is really cool,
They still do a lot of the shows that they would do, so if you haven't been there before, they still do a lot of the shows. You can still go inside a lot of the museums.
You can go on stagecoach rides, you can ride the cars, the carousel, you can do all the stuff that you would normally enjoy in the park. Plus, you can check out all these different little events that they do. Tea dueling, Madame Askew does an amazing tea duel. She does it on the main stage, so everybody can. They have bands, they have performers, they have everything. It's just an amazing event to go to.
Teapot racing.
You should all enter.
You should all enter.
You should all enter.
You should all enter.
Crawler was in it, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes. That was the best. You
So,
went in on the dudes.
We'll be here till 3. If you want to come up and look at it, please get a closer look. If you want to touch anything, we'll be up here to help you out, feel some of the things, or feel weights or whatever. Any tips or anything like that. So we're pretty much done with our talk. We'll be here definitely to.
On behalf of the Art Association, we really want to thank you so much.
Thank you for having us again.
It's our favorite art show. And we want to thank all of you for coming down. Because when we first did this, we had a fair turnout for being kind of last minute or whatever. But we really do appreciate you all coming down and taking a chance and listening to us and to seeing some of our work, because that's why we do it. As much as we tell people we do it for ourselves, we do it so people can go, ooh.
If you want to come back or tell your friends, tell them come on back.
Yeah.
We're open from 10 to 1 every day, but what?
Monday through Saturday.
Monday through Saturday.
And the exhibit runs through
the end of the month.
Yeah, it'll be here till the end of the month.
And if you need anything sewn, see these 2 ladies up front.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have cards up here too. If you want to go onto my Facebook site, General Robot.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Play and Podcast Network. And feel free to enjoy our other shows, such as D&D Journey of the 5th Edition and Scion Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion hero to Ragnarok story. Thank you for listening.